Hello, hello. Can thou hear me? I don't know if I'm live yet. Yeah, we're live. We're live. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Now, we've finally gotten on to Book Epsilon. Book Epsilon's only 10 pages long, so I'm going to just try and smash it out today. Because the next book, Book Eta, is like considerably longer. Um, we can finally get into some philosophy now. After reading only, you know, 150 pages, which is the length of a small book. Like a lot of small books are like 100 and something pages long. So after reading the length of a small book, we can actually read philosophy instead of just like other stuff. So let's get into it. Let's get it smashed out. Book Epsilon, Chapter 1. Okay, first we have to read the commentary because we're not smarty pants here. We are now almost ready to pass to the consideration of substance itself. But in Book Epsilon, Aristotle still wishes to add a few more distinctions to the picture that he has built up of the activity of philosophy. Okay, so we don't even get. That's probably why Book 8 is considerably longer than all the other ones up till now, because it's actually philosophy. In this chapter, he stresses again that philosophy is concerned with the whole being and not just some part of it, as is each of the departmental sciences. He also makes the important new point that another difference between philosophy and the departmental sciences is that the former, but not the latter, is interested in the intrinsic properties of the subject of science itself, and not just demonstrating its accidental features. Furthermore, the departmental sciences take for granted the existence of their domains, whereas it is part of the task of philosophy to prove the existence of its. Aristotle also takes up the distinction between the practical, productive, and theoretical sciences. Hold on one second. Hey, I'm back. Had to sneeze. Productive and theoretical sciences, and further subdivides the last of these into physics, which is concerned with separately existing entities which naturally have both matter and movement, mathematics, which is concerned with non-separable entities which do not have movement, and the third and highest theoretical science, which is concerned with things that are separable but immune to movement and process. This science is called theology, but is it is also to be identified with first philosophy. The apparent contradiction between claiming that philosophy is the universal science of being and that it is the science of the highest kind of being and substance is removed when it is understood that the highest substance is the cause and principal being as a whole, and thus the proper object of philosophy even on the earlier account. This is something that's always surprised me, like when I first picked up this book, is the fact that, from what I understand, in this book, Aristotle will argue for an unmoved mover, a first principle, a first cause, and he will call that thing God, which is kind of crazy considering, like, when did Aristotle live? Like, yeah, he lived like hundreds of years before Christ, and for him to come up with such a thing is pretty crazy, in my opinion. I don't know. From a polytheistic society, I don't really know what was going around at the time, to be fair. So maybe monotheistic ideas were floating around, but who knows? It is the principles and causes of the things that we are seeking. And clearly, it is their principles and causes just as things that are. Now there is, to be sure, something that is the cause of health and of fitness, and there are principles, elements, and causes of mathematical entities. and quite generally any science which, in whole or in part, involves reasoning or inference is concerned with causes and principles, be they more precise or more primordial. On the other hand, all these other sciences being devoted to a certain sort of thing that is a certain genus, set to work on that delimited domain, they do not at all consider that which is simpliciter or just as that which is, nor does any such science offer an account of what it is to be a thing in their domain. Rather, they start this, displaying it in some cases to the senses, and in others taking it as a hypothesis, and go on to offer more or less rigorous demonstrations of the per se attributes of their proprietary genera. Plural for genus. This sort of procedure is indicative and is a plain is as and it is as plain as a pikestaff that it does not amount to a demonstration of essence or of what it is to be a thing. The style of disclosing the entity is some other, at any rate not this. It is in keeping with this that the sciences do not occupy themselves with the question whether or not their proprietary genus exists. The question whether something exists requires the same mode of thinking as demonstration of an essence. Now, it so happens, as a matter of fact, that the proprietary domain of the science of nature, too, is a certain genus of that which it is. This science takes as its domain that kind of substance which has within it the principle of its own undergoing some process or not. And this is as much as to say that this science is neither practical nor productive. For the principle of anything that is produced lies in that which produces it. Mind, as it may be, or skill, or some potentiality, and the principle of anything that is done lies in that which it does, which does it, The faculty of choice, that which is done, and that which is chosen are the same thing. If then all rational activity can be divided into the practical, the productive, and the theoretical, the science of nature would be a kind of theoretical activity, but theoretical of the kind of entity that can undergo change, and with substance according, indeed, to its basic definition, not separable from matter. It is, however, vital not to overlook the question of what it is to be a thing, and the definitional account of how it is what it is. If we leave these out, scientific inquiry is mere shadow boxing. We can then distinguish things which, being susceptible of definition, there is something which it is to be two types, snub type and snub type. What does he mean by snub type? What is that? Short, slightly upturned. Okay, like with a snub nose, I guess. Snub type entities and concave type entities. I feel like we need. This would be. I'm going to complain for a second. One of the things that I like and dislike about this this translator, which is different from like the politics and the Nicomachean ethics, is the translator of this one, of the Metaphysics, he deliberately said in the introduction, he was like, hey man, I'm gonna like write a blurb explaining what this chapter's about every time there's a new chapter, but I'm not gonna add like a gajillion footnotes and what's the term when you add like the little number next to the word? Anyway, he was like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna let you read it as is, because that way you can get the flow and everything. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. But now when I'm here and I read snub type entities and concave type entities, it would really be useful for there to be a little, you know, a little number here. I forget the term, but a little number here explaining at the bottom of the page what he's talking about. Anyway, the difference is as follows. Snub type entities are immersed in matter. The snub is by definition a concave nose, whereas concave types, like concavity itself, do not as such involve perceptible matter. Now all natural entities are quite uniformly given snub-type definitions. Consider a few examples: nose, eye, face, flesh, bone, animal in general, and leaf, root, bark, plant in general. In each case, the definition must refer to change, so that in each case they must have matter. It is then clear how we are to investigate and define essences for the purposes of the science of nature. It is also clear why some types of soul fall within the domain of natural science. Those types, that is, that essentially involve matter. Okay, natural science is theoretical. Case concluded. What about mathematics? Theoretical too. Ah, but does its domain consist of entities removed from all change and standing apart? Too early to say. A distinct question to which a positive answer can indeed be given is whether some mathematical arguments treat these entities as unchanged and separate. Suppose, however, that there is something that is eternal, unchanging, and apart. Does this putative does this putative entity form the domain of a theoretical science? Yes, of course, but not that either of natural science or of mathematics, but of a science more fundamental than them both. The domain of natural science is things that are in a way separate, but which are eminently subject to change. And at least part of the domain of mathematics is things that are not subject to change, but also not separable, in the sense of being separable from matter. But first science deals with things that are separable and are remote from change. All the causes must be eternal, of course, but eternity must pertain more specially still to the causes of first science, operating as they do to produce those effects of divinity that are manifest even to us. Let us, then, say that there are three forms of contemplative philosophy: mathematics, natural science, and theology. That is I like that quote. I'm stealing that quote. I'm writing this down on a different thing because I'm going to make that my new. I don't know. I like having a quote on like my Discord like bubble. That might be my new one for a time being. For who can doubt that, if there is divinity anywhere in the universe, then it is in the nature studied by first science, that it is to be found, and it is also for the supreme science to study the supreme genus, and contemplative study is to be chosen above all other sciences. But it is this first science of theology that we must refer to all other kinds even of contemplation. I suppose someone will raise the quibble: is the domain of first philosophy, then, universal or concerned with some single genus and nature? Actually, hold on, I want to check something. Yep, never mind. Actually, you can answer this question both ways, even for mathematics. Geometry and astrology have single nature domains, whereas general mathematics is universal. Anyway, our answer is this: either A, there is no substance beyond those furnished by nature, in which the case the science of nature is the first science, or B, there is some substance that is without change, and if B is true, then that substance is prior to all others, and the science of it is first philosophy. And such a science is universal because it is first, and here we will have the science to study that which is just as that which is, both in essence and in the properties which, just as a thing that is, it has. We are now at last in a position to commence the study of being, but Aristotle again reminds us that there are at least four basic accounts of being: accidental being, being as truth, the category of being or substance, and being in actuality and potentiality. Aristotle's interests is going to be above all in substance, as he has already made clear, and also in questions of actuality and potentiality. He now wishes to eliminate the first two kinds of account of being from the inquiry. In fact, being as truth has already been dealt with in Book Gamma. Here in Epsilon, he concentrates on accidental being, although he will have more to say on being as truth in the last chapter. He begins by defining accidental being. Entities can be divided into those that have being always of and of necessity, those that have being for the most part, and those that only have being sometimes. It is the last sort of entities that we call accidental, and their causation is crucially material. This is the reason for their inferiority, and another is that they fall outside of the scope of science. Sorry, I have a blocked nose, which studies only such things as have being either always and of necessity, or for the most part. Now, the locution, the thing that is, locution, I forgot that word. Yeah, I think it's this one. An utterance regarded in terms of its intrinsic meaning, or reference as a distinction, as distinct from its function or or purpose in context. Now the locution, the thing that is, unencumbered with qualifications, is used in an important variety of ways. We have seen that one such way is with regard to that which is accidentally, while another is the use as the true. That which is not is, on this usage, the false. And then there is the whole table of categories: substance, quality, quantity, place, time, etc. And finally, there is that which is potentially and that which is actually. Given all these ways of using the locution, we can begin by saying sorry, I don't know if you guys are hearing how gross I am, but I am being gross. Yeah. There can be no theoretical treatment of that which is accidentally. This is clearly borne out by the fact that no science, be it practical, productive, or theoretical, takes cognizance of the accidental. Take production. If one produces a building, one does not produce all the accidental properties that come into being with the building. In fact, there is an infinity of the latter. It happens very often that a building produced provides pleasure for some, harm for others, and convenience for still others, so that the building can be described as different from every other thing that is, but the architect has not produced any of these accidental properties. It is exactly the same with geometry, whose devotees do not contemplate the accidental properties of figures, nor bother with whatever difference there might be between, say, a triangle and a triangle with angles equal to two right angles. There is no real surprise about all this, for accidental expression is in effect an expression without a definition. We can, in this light, sympathize with Plato's classification of sophistry as dealing with that which is not, For more or less all sophistic arguments concern accidental properties, such as whether the musical and the literate are the same or different, or whether Corsicus is the same or different from the musical Corsicus, or whether everything that is, but is not eternal, has come to be, from which it can be concluded that if someone musical and someone if someone is musical and become literate, he must also have been literate and become musical. This is but a sample of the veritable galingale of such sophisms. Galingale. Galingale. Eurasian sedge with. I doubt it's that. I doubt it's that either. What is this word? I'm assuming it's just like gobbledygook, is basically what he's saying. No. Hmm. Aromatic rhizome. I don't know. Maybe he does mean the rhizome formerly used in perfumes. Eurasian sedge. As like, um, maybe it's a metaphor. Is what I'm thinking of. Like, like veritable, because it's sophistry and it's mist. It's like smoke. It's not real. It's just elusive and sort of not. You know, I don't know. I was gonna say grippy, but that sounds weird. It's like it's not um, tangible. It's just sort of a fake art. All this goes to show that the accidental is very close to that which is not. But this can, in any case, be shown by the fact there is generation and destruction for things that are in one of the other ways, but not for things that are accidentally. The discussion of accidental, however, to the limited extent that such is possible, is not to be dismissed out of hand. We must go on we must go on to state its nature and the cause of its being. In doing so, perhaps, we will at the same time be explaining why it is no subject of a science. Well, the things that are include things that are always, and of necessity, in the same condition. We are not referring to enforced necessity, but to the necessity ascribed on the basis that it cannot be otherwise. And things are not of necessity or indeed forever, but rather for the most part. Now it is the latter that is the principle and the cause of being for the accidental. For whatever would be neither always nor for the most part would be classified as accidental. Suppose, for instance, that in the season of the Arctic cold, were to prevail, this we would regard as an accident, whereas if there were a sweltering heat wave, we would not. And this is because the latter, unlike the former, is always for the most part the case. It is also an accident that man is white, for men are not always or for the most part white. But it is not an accident that he is an animal. And it is an accident that the builder heals, since it is not the nature of the builder but of the doctor to produce health, whereas it is an accident if the builder is also a doctor. Similarly, the delicatessen oh, Scheiße. Delicatessen. Hmm. I think that's just like someone who works at a deli. Bent only on titillation of the palate might achieve a miracle cure, but it is just in its capacity as a delicatessen. We would all call it an accident. Of it sort of produces the health, but not really. The other thing that are have corresponding productive capacities sometimes, but for accidents there is no skill or dedicated capacity. When when things are or are generated accidentally, their cause is also accidental. If then not everything either is or is generated always of necessity, but most things are for the most part, then there must be that which is accidentally. For instance, the white man is neither always nor for the most part musical, so that when he becomes musical this will be an accident. If not, everything would be of necessity. It is then matter capable of being other than it is for the most part that is the cause of the accidental. As for the principle, it must be the following question: is there nothing which is neither always nor for the most part, or is this impossible? If we take it that there must be some such things, then these will be the subjects of chance and accidental. Is it, then, the case that there is that which is for the most part, but that which is always is not a property of anything? Or conversely, are there some things that are eternal? Well, let's put that question off for now. What we have seen is that there is no science of the accidental, for all science is either of that which is always, or that which is for the most part. Indeed, how otherwise would understanding, let alone teaching, be possible? A scientific subject has to be defined as arising either always or for the most part. For example, it is true for the most part that suspension of honey is beneficial for fever patients, but anything that falls outside of this would be unpredictable, as also will its non-occurrence be. We cannot, for instance, describe it as not happening on the day of the new moon, since even what happens on the day of that new moon is either something that always happens or something that happens for the most part, whereas the accidental must be different from these. This concludes the discussion of the accidental. We have seen what it is, from what cause it comes, and that there is no science of it. Basically, how I would word this, I get what he's saying. Like, if you have a property of something that is not necessarily related to the substance of a thing, or an outcome that's not necessarily related to the substance of a thing, and doesn't happen often, or happens in ways that aren't really related to its substance, then it's an accidental property and it's not really to do with science. Because that's not really what science is about. You heard? Alrighty. Epsilon 3. The notion of accidental being entails that of accidental causation, and Aristotle explores this in the present chapter. He shows that with accidental causal chains there is some link which is in a way fortuitous, in that its occurrence is not required of necessity. It is an important question, dealt with extensively in the physics, though not here. Yeah, I'm going to read the physics once I'm done with the metaphysics, and I'm going to read the categories, and I'm going to read prior analytics, posterior analytics, de anima. And then I think once I read, what was it? Physics, categories, prior analytics, posterior analytics, de anima. Once I read those 5 books, I can have said to have read everything written by Aristotle. So I've got 5 books to go. I've read through. I've read two. I've read two books by Aristotle, and if I just read this one and five other ones, six books, then that's it. I'm I've read it all. That's not related to this at all, but I just thought I'd say it. Clearly, there are principles and causes that are such as to be generated and destroyed without their generation or destruction in fact occurring. If this were not the case, everything would be of necessity, assuming that for each thing that is generated and destroyed there must be a non-accidental cause. We can put the question whether such a thing will exist or not, to which the answer will be yes, if a certain other thing is generated, and if not, no. And the generation of this other thing will in turn be dependent on that of a third. From this it is clear that if time is of limited duration and a fixed amount, a constantly being deducted from it. What? From this it is clear that if time is of limited duration and a fixed account is constantly being deducted from it, the procedure will always lead to the present moment. Okay. Thus, a given person will, if he goes out, meet a violent end, and if he will do this, viz. Go out, if he is thirsty, and he will be thirsty if X, Y, and Z, such a series will always lead either to what is occurring at the moment or to some one of the past events. For instance, he will go out if he is thirsty, and he will be thirsty if he eats something hot, and of course he is either doing so or not, so that it is a necessary matter that either that he will or that he will not die, and even if you leap back to past events, the same still holds, for this very past event is present in something at the start of the reasoning, so everything that is to be will be of necessity. For example, a living animal will eventually die, and this is because of something that has already happened, such as, perhaps, the opposites are combined in the same individual. It is, however, not yet determined whether the animal is to die by disease or violence, but whichever is the outcome will occur conditionally on some other event. The process is, therefore, clearly to an initial principle, from which there is no further progression to something else. This principle will be that of an outcome of chance, and there will be no further thing which is the cause of its coming to be. But of what quality are the principle and cause at the start of such an induction, whether material, final, or efficient, is a question of importance and difficulty. Okay. Epsilon 4. Aristotle now deals sum, sum, summarily. I can't speak English, man. Aristotle now deals summarily with being as truth. Being as truth or falsity is a matter of associations made in the mind. If the mind associates things that are associated in the world, then it has truth, if not, a falsity. Yeah, so that's sort of close to my definition. I'd say truth is that which is in accordance with reality. This means that this kind of being is merely an affection of the mind and not something in the world. Thus, both accidental being and being as truth fall outside the direct remit of philosophy, the one being intermediate and random, and the other being mental, not real. This leaves philosophy free to examine being that is both determinate and real, i.e. substance, which is to be the topic of the next two central books. We may now leave the subject of that which is accidentally, now that a satisfactory account has been given of it. Now that which is as being true, can I just say, like, if we're going off of this definition, we'll see with this, like, page, but it's kind of sounding like Aristotle's kind of a nominalist in some ways. I don't know, we'll see. Which is not being false, have to do with composition and division, and the conjunction of them has to do with the two poles of a contradiction. For truth involves assertion in the case of a combination and denial in the case of a separation, while falsity is the contradiction of this arrangement. And as how thinking of things conjointly or separately occurs, this requires another discussion. And by this I am meaning the togetherness and apartness that is not connected with the sequence but with a single presentation. For it is not in the state of affairs that truth and falsity arise. Certainly the good is not the true, and the bad the false straight off, but in thinking, and for things that are simple for essences. Truth and falsity do not arise even in thinking. In light of all this, it is for the latter discussion to consider what account should be given of that which is and is not in this way. But since it is in thought and not in states of affairs that composition and divisions occurs, and since that which is in this way is a different thing that is from those things that are in the standard setting way, for the thought processes either compounds or divides off of the essence of a thing, or its possession of a quality or a quantity, or some of the other categories. We can pass on from that which is as being true just as much as we can from that which is accidentally. The cause of that which is accidentally lacks definition, while the cause of that which is as being true is something that happens to a thought process. They are thus both connected with the remaining genus of that which is, and do not reveal some nature of that which is as obtaining independently. Let us then leave these two and turn to the consideration of the causes and principles of that which is proper, just as that which is. It became clear in the discussion of the many ways in which each thing is said to be that which is said in many ways. Ooh, now we're at book Zeta, and I'm only 40 minutes, basically 40 minutes in. That's crazy. Yeah, part of me wants to keep going. Hmm. I mean, especially considering book Zeta is very long. Book Zeta is like, I don't know how many pages, but it's like I think it's like 30 or 40 pages long. This one was only 10 pages long. But I think just for the sake of keeping it together, we're going to leave it there. Um, Thanks for watching if you are watching. I don't know if we have any people watching the stream. Nope. That's okay. Either way, I will talk to you all. I'll see you all in the next one. Um, I am Sinner. Please like and subscribe.